Today with our fabulous DMI capstone class at the School of Journalism and Mass Communication. I am here with the fabulous Katie Smith, who is one of my graduate assistants, and we're so excited to have you here with us today. Katie, what are we doing today?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Dr. Stewart. I'm very excited to be here. Today, we're going to be here with our DMI capstone class. So to kind of just give an introduction for those who are watching on whether you're on LinkedIn or X, the DMI major here at Texas State University is really all about preparing students for careers in the evolving digital media landscape. So it's a fairly new major, and it's the only STEM major in the School of the College of Fine Arts and Communication, which is really exciting. So that means that we're combining technology, media, and communication in a really exciting way. And so this DMI capstone class is kind of the culmination of everything that these wonderful students have learned throughout their undergraduate here at Texas State. So for the past 3 or 4 years, they're pulling together all of those skills that they've learned to create a really professional looking portfolio and website using Bootstrap. So this just kind of showcases their work to help them, stand out in the upcoming job market that they're about to be entering. And I think that this panel is a really wonderful opportunity to speak to some very experienced and wonderful people that are in these industries right now. And so I'm really excited to hear from them today. I'm excited to hear the questions that our wonderful students have created. And I'm just so glad to be here on live with everyone.
Thank you, Katie. I'm really, really excited to be here with all of you today. And my name is Nicole Stewart, and I have the wonderful privilege of getting to join these students every Monday, and it's been such a joy to watch them grow throughout this semester. I'm just going to get you to very quickly introduce yourselves. We can just go across the top row, second row, bottom row, hi, I'm, and what you're interested in, and we'll move you down and move the guest speakers up.
Hi, I'm Matthew Carson. I'm interested in website design and graphic design.
Thanks, Matthew. It looks like you're struggling to get your unmute, so I'll see if I can unmute you. No, it's not letting me.
So are we doing intros? My thing lagged, so I barely heard the last thing.
That's okay. Just a quick intro, your name and what you're interested in.
Got you. Hi, I'm Owen Yap. I'm a digital media innovation major, and I love photography, social media design, and website design.
Thanks, Owen.
Hi, I'm Jillian, and I'm interested in social media management and photography.
Very cool. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Bradley. I'm interested in really anything to do with content creation, video, photo. I like editing. Anything in that sphere.
Hello, I'm Alicia. I'm a senior at Texas State, and I am interested in digital marketing.
Fantastic. Well, we want to say thank you to all of you for coming on up to say hello. You're going to see our students kind of disappear into the background a little bit, but they are here and they're going to wave their hands anytime they want to come on up. So feel free to do that. Next up, we are just one second. We're going to introduce you to some of our wonderful guests today. And I just want to first and foremost express my deep gratitude for you taking your time and attention to be here today, only because I know you're busy and I know you have a lot going on. I want you to know I posted this panel across platforms, and LinkedIn people said, this is a powerhouse panel. People are very excited to see this panel. So hopefully we'll get lots of people tuning in, not just our class as well. So we're excited for that. So first and foremost, let me start with Felicia. Felicia is actually one of our Texas State alumni, and we're really, really grateful to have you here today. So she is an agency programmer who develops websites for a woman-owned design company in Houston. I think that's awesome. A graduate student of Texas State University, she's built an impressive career in digital innovation. She was the first engineering fellow at the Texas Tribune, a role that paved the way for her work as a web developer developer at the University of Houston and her current position in the private sector. In addition to her professional work, Felicia stays engaged with the tech and design communities and freelance web design. So in her free time, she channels her creative energy as a volunteer DJ at KTRU Rice Radio. I need to listen. I'm so excited to hear about this. Hi, Felicia. How are you doing today?
I'm great. I'm great. The weather is still very humid and gross in Houston, but we're making it through. Eventually it will get cold, but I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
Wonderful to have you. And then Albert Suarez, who is just amazing, and I'm very fortunate to work with on a regular basis. He is our digital media specialist at Texas State University School of Journalism and Mass Communication. And what's wonderful about Albert is that he has both an undergraduate degree in communication design and a graduate degree in mass communication, also from Texas State. So he is working here, but he also did all of his education here, which I think is really wonderful. Prior to his current role, Albert established himself as an entrepreneur, founding and operating a creative consultancy that he specializes in professional photography and brand development for commercial clients. His distinct combination of academic experience and entrepreneurial experience positions him uniquely to bridge theoretical frameworks with practical industry applications. So today he's working towards digital media in higher education, and we're so thrilled to have you. How are you doing, Albert? Oh, we can't hear you. That's okay. It might be your ear pods, but no, we can't hear you at all. But that's okay. Hopefully we'll figure that out. Feel free to play around with that. And last, but certainly not least, when I started to think about this panel, this is the colleague and mentor that I really wanted to bring on board to today's discussion. This is Dr. Cindy Royal. She is a professor here in the Digital Media Innovation Program. Cindy Royal is a Regents teacher and professor here in SJMC, but more importantly, she is the person who led the team that started this DMI program, and we are so grateful to you for that. And she spearheaded that in 2016, and we have now over 400 students. So this DMI capstone course is really thanks to a lot of the work that Dr. Royal and that team did. And also, I'm not only grateful for the students, I'm also grateful that I get to be a part of this amazing team and an amazing program, because we really get to do really innovative things. I think sometimes in higher education, we don't get to have as much fun. So I'm excited for that. Her research agenda includes the study of emerging career roles for media students that integrate communication and technology skills in the area of product management, user experience design, social media, and web development. How are you doing?
I'm great, Nicole. Thank you so much for having me here today. And I'm so glad that you have joined our group, as well as I'm so glad that every one of you students have joined this journey with us in digital media innovation. Because it was a little bit of a dream when we started putting it together. It was about 10 years ago that we started thinking about it, and to see it come to fruition and have so many students come to this degree is very gratifying. And I also teach a digital media innovation capstone, so I'm glad to be a part of this class, and I'm sure I've had some of you already in some classes, so I'm just really happy to be here to answer these questions today. You're muted.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're really excited to see all of you today. If you had to, and this I'm putting you on the spot, if you had to describe your digital media experience in one word or 2 words max, what would your buzzword be?
You want me to answer that?
Sure, all of it.
Transformational.
Great word. Albert, I don't know if you have a mic yet. No, you don't. Oh no, I don't know how to fix that.
Okay. I need to go under settings and try to pick them up.
And you can even go into the settings on your computer and just make sure you give it access. Felicia.
I would say expanding. Yes.
Expanding. I like that. Transformation, expanding. I think that hits all the notes. Like, I remember teaching a class in 2010 and telling them social media jobs are going to be a thing. And I remember the whole class saying, no. And, now we see tons and tons of jobs in this field. And I remember a few semesters later saying, Amazon's going to start delivering with drones at some point. And my students went, no. And so oftentimes what we think might happen changes over time. So I'm curious how your role or your job or your skill set has adapted to emerging technologies over the course of your career. Felicia, can we start with you, and then we'll go down to Cindy, and hopefully we'll be able to get Albert in at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the biggest emerging technology that everyone is talking about right now is AI. And as a web developer, it's a little bit troublesome because I know there's hesitancy like, oh, I'm a programmer. Is AI going to take over my job? And I feel that right now it actually is just helping you work faster. It's a resource. It's not something that I would necessarily rely on. But I think, from coding things from scratch or Googling, everyone's Googling, right? And all of a sudden being able to really talk through and kind of problem solve with this AI tool, whether you're using ChatGPT or GitHub Copilot as a programmer or anything like that. That is something that I think is emerging. I work with a bunch of designers who use Adobe software, and they use, Photoshop AI features, Illustrator AI features that just help them work faster. Not necessarily, oh, this is going to do my job for me, but it helps you work faster, gets a better product out, and that's also a really good business strategy. Less time on working on a big project ends up helping the company money-wise.
I love that. And Cindy, how about you?
Well, in terms of across a career, we're looking at a different time horizon for me than for Felicia.
Yes.
So my career has seen a lot of changes and shifts, and the technology shifts have been significant ones, because if you go back to when I was in college, we did not have computers in our homes. We definitely didn't have laptops or smartphones. The internet existed, but it wasn't widely used in regular settings. The web had not been invented yet. I wrote papers and typed them on typewriters. This is, the change that I've seen in my career. And I worked in the tech industry, so that kind of provided some perspective for me to appreciate technology more. And at one of my jobs, somebody one day just showed me some HTML. We were kind of goofing off, and she was like, oh, look at this. And we were starting to use browsers. She showed me some HTML. She pulled it up in the browser, and it was like that watershed moment, like angels were singing and birds were, chirping. And it was like, this is where I need to go. And so I started learning all of that kind of on my own. And in, the late 90s, after becoming a little bit dissatisfied with my professional career, I realized I needed to do something else with my life. It's a bit of like a midlife crisis, let's say. And so that's when I decided to get my PhD. And I realized that communication was going to be widely affected by technology. So, my undergrad degree was in business. I have an MBA, and I made a big shift. I went to get my PhD in a mass communication program because I had this hunch that this internet thing was going to be important. That hunch did happen to turn out. That's pretty cool. But I went to UT to get my PhD. I ended up at UT. That's what brought me to Austin. I had worked in Houston at Compaq prior to that, so I was already in Texas. But when you think about the time frame in the late 90s, Google had just started. There was no social media. We were starting to have blogs. And so none of the things that I teach now are things that I learned in an academic program. None of them. That's not to say that an academic program is not important, because I learned how to learn. I learned about theory, and I learned how to communicate with different kinds of people. I was exposed to different people and ideas, and all of that allowed me to be able to grasp new concepts and to be able to keep up with technology and to move forward. So everything I've done, I've had to learn on my own. And, maybe it's a YouTube video, maybe it's a LinkedIn Learning, maybe it's asking ChatGPT these days, right? But I think that's really reflective of what you all can expect in your careers, is that what you know right now is only the very, very beginning, because you are about to embark on a lot of transformation over the course of your careers. And hopefully you'll be the kind of person who will lead that transformation in your industries because of the background you're getting with us.
Thank you, Cindy. This little chat reminds me of, do you remember when Bill Gates tries to explain the internet to Dave Letterman? And if you haven't seen this clip, go and YouTube it, or you can probably find it on every social media site at this point. But he's like, but what do I need that for? And it's just hilarious. Albert, would you like to try again?
Let's try this one more time. Yes.
We have
Okay,
you.
great. Third time's the
Wonderful.
charm. Excellent. Dr. Stewart, thanks so much for having me. And this is such a cool conversation. This is my first time doing this, but
Thanks for coming, Albert.
Of course. No, thank you. So can you repeat the question real quick, just so it's fresh on my brain?
How have your roles, jobs, or skills adjusted? Like, basically, what has been the communication technology transformation over your career?
That's
Which
a great
might have something to say with cameras. Like, cameras have changed so much in a decade.
Well, even the post-production process in itself, especially with video and photography, there's so many tools now, especially for portrait photographers like myself, event photographers. But in the post-production process, like we have a lot of AI-driven tools that allow, like Dr. Royal mentioned, a lot of ways for us to work more efficiently. And I think using AI tools effectively while still maintaining that kind of human element, that creativity component and oversight is going to be really important as we kind of navigate this new transformative, I'm stealing your words, Dr. Rowe, I'm sorry, but just these really important journeys into AI. So I will say, I think extended reality, so AR and VR, are kind of trending and emerging right now, and there's a growing demand for it, especially for people who can design immersive experiences for their customers, even though they can't be there physically. That doesn't necessarily stop them from experiencing these interactive 3D models for learning, for going on like field trips, for going on like tours of different places. That's huge that I see more so is just kind of that AI conversation, and also some content strategy and management as well. So brand storytelling across platforms, social media management, especially with these enhanced AI tools, and then content optimization, right? So looking at your workflows and then seeing how you can best effectively use them to not necessarily take away the human element, but to actually propel it forward. So I think those are some of the things that come fresh to mind. Did that answer your question?
It absolutely did. And it's so interesting because I think cameras are one of those very interesting moments. And we started this class with a short lecture on how, like, the surviving disruptive technologies in our industry. And we talked about Kodak, especially because Kodak actually developed the first digital camera, but were reluctant to put it to market because they wanted it to be only for professionals. Well, here we can see how this like transformative potential, to borrow from Cindy Royal's great word, is really changing the trends of the time. And I noticed here that Natalia says, I agree with Felicia. I think AI can be extremely beneficial and can help with efficiency. And a lot of us think of AI as automation. And we think of, I know Albert said like, mixed reality or VR, augmented reality as kind of like these next trends. But I guess that links to this next question, which is, what emerging job markets do the three of you see as gaining significant traction, or like not even there yet, but that will be there in 5 to 10 years? What does that look like? And I'm going to start with Dr. Royal because we haven't gotten to start with her yet.
Well, I think that the first thing that students need to understand is that if you're going to have a career in communication, it really is a career in technology. And I don't need to tell DMI students that because that's why you're here and that's what you're learning, but to understand the sort of integration of it's a marriage of technology and communication, because this is how we communicate now. And so one of the most emerging job areas that I've been studying in my research has to do with product management. And product management has been around for some time, but I think there's just so much potential for it to grow and change. And a phrase that I use often, have used in my research, is these products aren't going to manage themselves. These products that we use every day, digital interactions on websites, mobile applications, things that use artificial intelligence, they don't just spring out of nowhere. Somebody has to have the idea, put the skills and resources together to make it happen, and then to maintain it over a life. And so practicing design thinking, user experience design, and product management, I think, are going to be the important ways of the future. And then I agree with what everybody else has said about artificial intelligence. Just get ready for that to be part of your life, part of jobs of the future, finding new ways to incorporate it. But also, because you've been in an academic program, you can critique these tools and have a better understanding of what makes them effective, what makes them ineffective, and what causes problems and issues. And then we can make better decisions about how they're applied and used, instead of just sort of randomly asking it and taking what it gives you. We need to be really critiquing what we're using in artificial intelligence. So I think really all those areas are the areas that students need to be really focusing on into the future, no matter what industry you're going into. I mean, it's not like you're just going to go be a web developer. I hear from alumni all the time that work in all kinds of jobs, and you're like, you know, that HTML I learned, I use it almost every day. You know, so having a range of skills and a good perspective on digital technologies and the ability to learn are going to be keys, you know, to your success in these emerging job markets.
Yeah, this semester, some of my students made AI influencers, and they made AI museums, and they said, I hadn't even considered these things. So, I mean, just continuing to push those boundaries, and also recognizing that, you know, when you have an opportunity in front of you, it's not just about learning that, it's about how do I then apply it to everything that's going to change and shift around that. But you can use those same kind of that toolbox that you have more broadly. Albert, would you like to jump in? What are the trends that are going to jump into our digital media job market in 5 to 10 years?
I think from a photography and videography standpoint, there's a lot of, I think, traditional videography stills that are still going to be very like super valuable, and but they're just going to be evolving, right, in a lot of fascinating ways. I think like corporate video, for example, with like remote work being so common now for everyone, there's going to be a huge demand for like high quality virtual event spaces and coverage, and then professional live streaming. I mean, like we're on a professional live stream right now, right? So I think just understanding those tools and see how we can use them to our advantage there. I've seen several of my former students like land great jobs in this space, especially combining like their camera and technical skills with this new technology that's happening. And the second is probably some drone photography or cinematography. I think right now there's a huge demand for it. It's not so much just about like, you know, getting overhead footage of like real estate options, right? It's everything from event coverage to, you know, documentaries to, you know, some other productions, both short form and you know, long form content in a variety of different spaces. And I think, you know, there's going to be so many different things that we see now with photography and videography now, and probably even virtual production too. I would say like The Mandalorian, for example. I'm not sure if y'all are nerds like me, but you know, just more production companies are using some sort of like some new developing softwares and game engines and LED walls for creating virtual sets, right? So, you know, creating this virtual space that looks really real. It's pretty awesome. It's quite amazing stuff, but just creating those new opportunities for camera operators in itself, right? And some of the people that are working on the back end behind the scenes of things that have that blend of both traditional cinematography and also these emerging digital technology spaces.
Thanks, Albert. I'm going to ask the students who are on LinkedIn right now or on Twitter to comment on the actual live feed with what you think some of the trends are going to be in 5 to 10 years. And I'm also going to ask Felicia to jump in, and then I'm going to ask these two wonderful students who are here, Brad and Matthew, to jump in on some of their thoughts. I know our class has done a lot of future thinking in this area, and I'd be curious to know what they think. So again, class, please be commenting on the live. Tell us in the chat what you think the next trends are going to be. Felicia, jump on in.
Yeah, so I do want to emphasize Dr. Royal's point about constantly learning. I think that's something that anyone in any job field needs to be doing. Like, you're not going to be doing the same hard skills forever. Things are going to happen, even with programming, new versions of code come out constantly. And being, ahead of the game is really important. But also, speaking of like augmented reality or even VR, I do think a communication standpoint is going to be really helpful for those future jobs, such as, okay, sure, you can develop, the programming skills for a VR video game. And I think that's what we all first think is video games. But how about, people with disabilities? Maybe they can't physically go to, a museum of fine arts. Somebody's going to want to create, a VR experience for them, or even AR, those popular Meow Wolves art exhibits. They use augmented reality all the time to kind of immerse the person already within that exhibit. And so I think constantly thinking about how the average person, maybe not an early adopter or an innovative person to some sort of technology, think about your everyday people who, well, when would I use this? When would I actually put on an Oculus Quest, in my day-to-day life, and kind of going from there.
I mean, I put it on almost daily, but I recognize I'm not the norm. And so one of the things I always say, just to echo some of these great conversations, is it's always going to be adjusting. And even when you think you've figured something out, it keeps adjusting and it keeps transforming, to keep using that beautiful theme for the day. And so one thing I say is, we'll have the internet, but it's going to be augmented with all of these other things. And that augmentation, I think, is so critical. I'm curious, Matthew, what do you think about what's the next trends for 5 to 10 years in digital media?
Well, when y'all were just discussing about augmented reality and mixed in with imaging and videography, I was thinking how this could apply then more than just media and video games. Like, this could be involved in construction, a lot more. I bet you it's going to expand into a lot more practical things. Like, let's say you're building a new bridge or a new area, you can see it in the actual living space without, not just in the blueprints. It's going to be like the blueprints are going to come alive, and you're going to be able to physically see where everything belongs and what errors could be made and how it's going to look as a finished product. And let's say a designer can create a 3D model of that. And it's with the drone work too, you could possibly use that to, you're going to need to see the entire landscape, and you're going to need the right people to use that to integrate it with the rest of the augmented reality if it's going to be in a big, large space like that. That's just what I was thinking when y'all were talking about it. And I was wondering how that's going to play further into the future. But
I don't know if you noticed what Peyton said. A trend that I think is going to happen in the future is the entertainment industry, is that theme parks are going to start using VR and AR technology and roller coasters. I think entertainment and culture industries are going to be most impacted by these augmented realities in a huge way, because people want to feel immersed in that. So I think spot on. And I liked the modeling. I think that's an interesting element. Bradley, what do you think?
There we go. To get away from AR and VR, because I feel like we've touched on it a lot, I'll talk about AI. I think we're in an AI infancy right now. It reminds me a lot of like when the first iPhones came out, or any new media technology, or new, like when Twitter first launched or whatever. It was in this infancy stage where like people weren't really sure about it. I think we're going to see a lot of advancements, and I think we're going to see a lot of implementation of AI into products we already use. And that's already happening. There's a lot of like some companies that are making, I don't know if y'all have heard of Rabbit. They made this little like phone type thing, but it's like an AI chatbot in a box. It doesn't sound that great, but if you implement it into other things like your fridge, you can talk to it about, hey, can you add this to my list? Or could you check out this thing on Amazon for me without leaving your kitchen? You just talk to your fridge. I think a lot of small integrations like that are going to continue happening. You're going to have AI in your car. Your Siri is going to be better. The Microsoft Copilot stuff, I think, is going to continue to get better. I think that is that branch of AI where we integrate it into our everyday items. I think that's kind of where the future is going for that.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate both of your perspectives and jumping on here as student perspectives. So we're just going to shift gears a little bit here. What advice do you have for students and actually just young professionals in general? Because I don't feel like this question only applies to students. I feel like it applies to anyone who's moving through the early parts of their career. But how do we navigate, and this just really builds off of what everyone's saying about AI, how do we navigate this sort of this era of automation? How do we deal with this? How do we prepare for this? How do we learn fast enough to keep up with it? One thing that I always say, and I don't know if you agree, but I'd be curious to know, is that AI isn't going to take your job. It's only going to replace the people who don't know how to use it. So I'm curious, maybe Albert, would you like to jump in?
I'd like to echo what Sarah mentioned on the chat there, and she said that she believes that there will be more acceptance towards using AI in daily lives, in our daily lives, to assist with mundane and repeatable tasks. I think that's so true. You know, it's going to speed up our workflows, and I think we're going to learn how to use it in a way that is more just efficient overall. And you know, that's, I guess, the advice that I have for young professionals or students just kind of navigating this interesting time is just, I think, learning the tools in itself and always being open to, you know, just applying them, testing them out, and seeing how they can ultimately create or be implemented into your workflow. It's not going to go anywhere. So I think we have the opportunity to embrace these technologies. And with that, I think it's also just kind of understanding, again, like just how it's ultimately going to be implemented. But I think that would be my first piece of advice.
Thank you. Felicia?
Yeah, I still want to reiterate, constantly be learning. Like, if you're currently scared of an AI tool, that probably means you need to just use it and face your fears. But yeah, I would say constantly be learning and understand that, for example, AI, that tool will never be able to replicate whatever creativity you're putting behind it. They're never going to be able to have that human touch. Again, you want to still be resourceful using all the tools that are, you know, popular, that people are everywhere using. Especially when you're a developer, you're going to be in, whether you're working in different places, some of them are going to use a whole different layout than you were previously using. So if you're already ahead of the game, oh, I already know actually a little bit how to use that. Okay, that's perfect. I transferred that from whatever I was learning and curious about that the other day into this new field, into this new, you know, just world that you're entering. And understanding that, yes, AI is a tool, but the person behind it is really what's most important.
What's so interesting about what you just said is so many students tell me, but I'm like afraid to try this. I'm afraid of it. It sounds so scary. And I always say you have to just put your hands in. Unless you're doing it, you're not going to learn how to do it. And so I think a huge part of that learning process is not fearing failure or not fearing fear itself. Cindy, do you want to jump into this question of your advice?
Of course. Because that's all I do is give advice all the time. But, you know, just going back to the topic of AI and how integrated it's going to be, I really feel like in a few years, we're going to look back at the era of Googling stuff as very quaint and simple, and that we actually would like put in a phrase and click on a link and hope the answer to our question was at that link, instead of AI just sort of solving the problem for us across numerous types of applications. So just as we've been talking about the progression of technology, this is definitely going to be a progression that's accelerating all the time. And yes, you have to try things and you shouldn't be afraid of things. There's so many opportunities that are free and accessible and available. But when I give students advice about preparing themselves for the future, there are two things. One is have a strong digital portfolio. You're doing this right now, I'm assuming, in your classes, or have one and you're building it. You need to be able to demonstrate what you can do. You can't just say, you know, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Swift UI, Unity, photography. You need to show people that you can do that. And I think it's a good idea to keep doing some passion projects after you graduate or on your own in your free time. I know that employers like to hear students talk about projects that they didn't necessarily do for class, but they did on their own, because that tells them a little bit more about that person. So, this is more about that dive in, learn something new, set a goal for yourself. It doesn't have to be super aggressive, the goal, but it should be like something that takes you to the next level. I'm going to try to apply this thing in a different way, and then make something. That's why the DMI program is so focused on making things. Theory is great and is very important, especially in academic research, but in general, in terms of understanding how the world works and being able to make decisions. But making something to show what you can do, I think, is key, especially at this part of your career. And then the second thing that I think is important is to network, because it really helps to have a wide ranging network of contacts. Being able to connect with people through social media is super helpful. So that LinkedIn, or the social platform that you're using on maybe Blue Sky, which is the next big thing, or X, or Instagram, try to make professional connections in those environments, as well as in person. I know Austin has tons of meetups, but really just whatever interests you, get out there and start talking to people, making those contacts, and stay in touch with your professors, because we want to help students get jobs. Nothing makes me happier than helping a student get a job. It makes me happier than it would if I were getting anything for myself. Just having that matchmaker capability that's like a student in a job. I love just sort of cheering them on, and we both get so happy together when they get in touch with me and let me know the interview went well, or I got the offer. And then even keep in touch with your professor, because if something happens in your career and you need some advice, sometimes they're the right person to be able to kind of help you through that and kind of guide you through what the next step might be. And I've had a lot of students who've gotten laid off, and we've talked about it. And then, a short time later, they ended up with a much better job. And a lot of times when I have guest speakers, we talk about that. We talk about not just the celebrations and the ups of a career, but we talk about the downs and how people got through it. And so you're going to have to be ready for a long career that is constantly changing, that you are going to be transforming. It's not just going to be you sitting there and being told what to do, but you're going to have a lot of agency to direct and influence the way that your career will go and the way that the organization that you're working in will go.
Thank you. Now I'm going to ask kind of a final question and then invite these wonderful, sorry, I'm trying to add you to the stage, but I'm playing with your mute button. Here we go, these wonderful students up, but I'm going to get you to kind of give me an answer to this question in like a short 1-sentence answer. And then I'm going to turn the floor over to some of these students to see if they have any questions or if they want to reflect on anything that has been said today. And same on the LinkedIn floor, please feel free to ask questions in that chat box. So the big question is, and Cindy Royal is talking about layoffs. Layoffs are huge at tech companies. We hear about these roll-offs all the time, or we know that you aren't going to maybe have your dream job out the gate. Like, these are kind of the things that you kind of have to walk through. But how can people future-proof their digital media careers as much as possible? What's that kind of one takeaway for them? Felicia, would you like to start?
Yeah, I would say, okay, in one statement is staying adaptable, learning, and do not give up. Yeah, those would be, that's what I had to go through. I graduated during the pandemic and the job market was not great. Life wasn't happening outside of your own home. And so constantly, just learning, staying adapt, just hardening your skills, buffing up your portfolio, making it look a little cuter, and then just being positive and know that eventually something will come.
I'm muted. I love it, I said. Cindy, how about you?
I think just being ready to understand that what you have learned has provided you the problem-solving skills that you're going to be able to take with you into your future. I always say that learning to code is a good skill for giving you confidence in your ability to solve problems. It's very logical, and you can apply that in any sort of a setting, a personal setting, if you can just breathe, count to 10, and look at it and be able to come up with a new way to solve that problem. And so just know that everything that you're learning in our program is contributing to that confidence in your ability to solve difficult technical problems. And then you're going to be valuable to anyone that you work for. And then always be forward thinking, always try things. And that doesn't mean you have to go down the path of every trend or fad that's coming along, but take a look at it and assess and think about how it might be able to be used, not just by you, but by somebody other than you.
Thank you, Albert. And then I'll get Katie to jump in maybe. How do you future-proof your digital media career?
I would say there's so many things. But the first thing that comes to mind is really just knowing your audience, whether it be your, creating and pitching a new idea to a client, or, you're starting a new venture into, a different market. I think like being able to really genuinely communicate those things to the audiences that you're speaking to and just really understanding them. So a lot of students that I hear are wanting to go into like some sort of social media content management, creation, things like that. Really understanding, like what platforms you use, and what are some of the things that are on the forefront. What are some of the tools that are within that tool belts that you have to have, and then how do you develop them, right? So I would say just that, which kind of goes into I think empathy building in itself. No one really talks about as much how much of a collaborative process it is. And if you're working with a client, if you're working with a colleague, if you're working with, different things, just understanding the human needs and wants in itself is going to take you really far. And I think just having that really sense of understanding of emotional intelligence too, right? So just really understanding that we're humans first, and we all have these needs and wants that are going to, they're going to serve different people. And, I think we just need to be able to understand those things in order for us to get kind of the comprehensive view, and ultimately give whoever it is, whether it's a product, whether it's like a content post, whether it's a service, photography, any of those things. I think it's important for us to really build that empathy, because at the end of the day, we're people to talking to people.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Katie, any advice?
Yeah, I think, Felicia, you made a really wonderful point about sort of this idea of embracing an attitude of lifelong learning. And I also think that's something that I learned in taking Dr. Royal's class last semester. We had a product manager, Sean Smith, come in, and he is a Texas State alum. And he actually came from a background of journalism, which is what I come from. And so seeing someone that didn't come from this like traditional background in digital media and didn't have that foundation, it made me realize that I think having hunger and having really hard work ethic will get you very far. And adapting, I think I just echo everything that Albert said about kind of adapting and having that that drive, because you can always learn new skills. And I think that that's important to keep in mind, that everyone has to start from somewhere. And so I think that's just the advice that I would give.
I love that advice. And I think determination is often such an undervalued skill. Like you can't outrun someone who doesn't stop running. And it's not to say you shouldn't rest. Of course you should rest, but that idea of like that unstoppable mindset, I think becomes so important. So we have some students on the floor. We have some students on X. We have some students on LinkedIn. I want to know, either in the comment chat or verbally, what was like one takeaway from today, and do you have any questions? And try and keep it brief, because I do realize we're running out of time, and then we'll try to round table like the one final response. Alicia, would you like to start us off?
Yes. Just want to say thank you for y'all's time. I felt like the discussion today was great. One takeaway, I really liked how we got into like different VR, AR, ideas. I think the museum idea like really stuck out to me. Like I thought that was really cool and like definitely want to like, I don't know, look more into that, like see what other people are saying and stuff. I had a question. So it's like specifically for interviews. Like I know we've talked about different advice, but is there any specific advice you can give us as we start preparing for job or internship interviews?
Thank you. We're going to hold our responses just so we can hear everyone's questions. Then we'll try and, get there in the last few minutes. Does anyone else really want to ask a question? Maybe we can have someone who hasn't talked yet. Owen? And then Jillian. Oh, we can't hear you, Owen. You are muted.
Okay, I thought I pressed it. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Just as social media and like communication is advancing, do you turn to like your inner circles or your digital media innovation people more than like researching things on your own, or maybe a mix of both? I'm just wondering where you go to people for information about new sources of media and stuff like that.
Great question. And Jillian, that'll be their last question, and we'll have kind of a quick response from everyone.
Thank you. Hi. So I am also a sustainability studies minor along with my DMI major, and I find it really interesting to talk about AI in my sociology classes because every sociology professor and student is really worried about AI and they're worried about it taking over our jobs. But then I come back to my major and nearly every professor says that we're just going to work with AI rather than it taking over our jobs. So I just thought it was really interesting to hear that again. But I want to know what you guys think about legislation and AI and how that may look in the future.
Recognizing that we only have like 2 minutes left, some quick responses. Maybe we'll start with Albert, Cindy, then Felicia, and whatever someone else doesn't answer, grab onto the next one.
Okay, let's see. So I think the one question that stuck out to me was just where do we go to people for resources? I think that was Owen's question. And my question would probably be, my answer to that would probably be going to the knowledge expert. I think if I needed anything like digital media innovation related, my go-to would probably be Dr. Royal as a like kind of hands down. But either going to that subject matter expert or going to friends that are insatiably curious about just that topic in itself, right? That are willing to really have that knowledge and understanding genuinely. I think that's super important. I do go to online resources, but I usually turn to friends that are really kind of well versed in that subject, and just go to the expert, I would say.
Wonderful. Next.
You want me to go next?
Yes.
I agree with Albert, but I also think there's so much autonomy in being able to solve a problem yourself by using the resources that you have at hand. And so you have to have judgment in like, this is something I need to go get advice. This is something I can figure out on my own, because there's a lot of resources out there. In terms of Alicia's question about preparing for interviews, I think being able to do as much research about the company as possible going into the interview is going to be key, and really understanding what the needs are of the job that you're applying for. Because in DMI, you are learning about a lot of things, and you might be tempted to just barrage people with like, I can shoot video and edit it, and I can make websites, and I made a VR experience, when the job is about social media. And so I think focusing on what they need and then having the sort of finesse to know when to bring in those other things to the conversation, because that may impress them. That may be the thing that makes you stand out. You made a VR experience also, but doing it in a way that approaches their needs. And then the final thing about interviewing, always have questions for them. When they say, do you have any questions? Don't ever say no. And then be ready to answer the question, why should we hire you? Why do you want this job? And have a good, more than I need the money, answer to that question, because people have lost jobs on not being able to answer that. Well, why should we hire you for this job? Why do you want this job?
Thank you. And last but not least, and as fast as possible.
Okay. I know Jillian asked something about legislation. I think, it's the same as the internet, right? The internet came first, then laws followed after that. I think it's going to be really more towards data protection. How often is my conversation with ChatGPT getting recorded, and how are they using that information? I think that's something that I would be on the lookout for. And yes, I want to say something about the interview question as well. Also know that the simple soft skills, time management, companies are looking for people who can time manage and then also add value to the company. Not only are you going to fill a position, but how are you going to help us evolve the company?
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciated this wonderful conversation. My heartfelt thanks and gratitude to Albert Suarez, Dr. Cindy Royal, and Felicia for coming on as these wonderful panelists, to Katie for always being there for me when I'm have these crazy ideas that I want to plan, and she just jumps on board with me. And to this wonderful DMI class, I really wanted to give back to you in some way. And this is kind of like my first, the panels are the way I'm doing that too at the end of this capstone class. And I hope this has been wonderful for you. We will be back on live next week with another panel about finding digital media jobs, which I'm also very excited about. Thank you for everyone who tuned in. I really thought it was just going to be my class, but thanks to everyone who's listening. And please feel free to share this with other classes. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. It was so much fun.
So much fun. Thank you. Bye, everyone.